Welcome back, everyone. This is Deal with the Devil by KloWhispers, Chapter 2, Part 2. First, I'm going to teach you how to fall without hurting yourself, and how to avoid getting punched. Izuku nodded almost violently, listening avidly to his new teacher. Today was his first day of training with Stain, and he was so eager to learn. He was finally learning how to fight. Soon, his excitement lessened and turned into exhaustion. Not even 10 minutes into the lesson, he was already aching, tired, and covered in bruises. Who knew falling correctly was that complicated? Well, he knew now. But he didn't complain. He just stood up again, wiped his face from sweat, and faced Stain again, and again, and again. But he always got back up, and each time, he was sure that Stain's grin got wider and his teeth shone brighter. That first day of training was hell. That's what he thought, at least. While he got back home, the night started to fall. He wondered what he would say to his mother. While she was pretty much never there and left him alone in their apartment very often, she wasn't mean to him. She left him money. The fridge was always full of food, and she was paying the rent. He honestly wasn't asking for more. Well, a hug or two sometimes wouldn't hurt, and some comfort and support, but he was quirkless, useless to the eyes of society, and to everyone. His mother never asked for that, for him to be a burden. It wasn't her fault. She was nice enough to let him stay in their apartment, so really, he shouldn't wish for more. His body was aching everywhere, but a different kind of ache that he was used to by the bullying. It was nice. Izuku smiled as he remembered his parting words with Stain, a promise to meet again at the same place the day after. The man hadn't said anything about his skill, but he hadn't said anything mean, either. So Izuku thought he didn't do badly. Also, he was totally going to train on his side, researching tutos on the internet. Stain had also told him he was going to have a strict regime and had to learn how to stretch well and maybe try meditation. It seemed like a lot, and Stain had laughed at that, telling him it was just the beginning, because after learning the basics, he would then learn sword fighting, hand-to-hand combat, and other skills Stain taught was useful. Izuku walked a little faster, a smile on his lips. He was going to work his hardest. Now. Mom, I'm home! Silence answered him. Izuku sighed. He didn't know why he still expected her to answer him. She was probably working a 12-hour shift again. As he undid his shoes and put them by the door, groaning when he felt his muscles ache at the movement, he wondered if he was going to tell that he had applied to UA. He had stopped talking about his dream of becoming a hero after meeting Chizumi, so surely she was thinking he had dropped the idea and was going to apply at another high school. But that wasn't the case. What was he going to say if he got in? He sighed. He didn't have to tell her, after all. When was the last time they spoke? 2 weeks ago, when she had noticed he had a pretty big bruise on his jaw. Thanks, Chizumi, for that one. And had asked him if he had gotten into yet another fight. Because, yes, for her, he wasn't getting bullied, but he was being a distraction and starting fights with other students. He hadn't really answered. He just shrugged, and she sighed, looking disappointed, then left the apartment for the night. Honestly, thank God she wasn't more curious, because, come on, she surely would have noticed something was up with him. And he would have gotten in so much trouble if someone had discovered he was in contact with the hero killer. He shook his head, clearing his thoughts. What he wanted to do now was take a shower with hot water, get rid of all the dried sweat. He went into his room, put his stuff down on his bed, took some clean clothes, black cargo pants, black sleeveless shirt, in fact, pretty similar to what he was wearing during the exam, His wardrobe had changed quite a lot after meeting Chizame. Practical, comfortable, and unnoticeable. He went into the bathroom, lit up the room, and his reflection in the mirror looked back at him. His skin was pale, and he had some dark circles underneath his green eyes, making his freckles more noticeable. His hair, now longer than ever before, because he didn't have the time nor the money to go to a hair salon, not because it looked cool on his mentor, so he wanted to do the same. He didn't know if it was because he was older or because of the length, but his hair was darker, almost black, but when it was under the light, specks of green could be seen. He pushed his hair back, noting that he should tie it up when training. What also changed since all those years were the scars. He had quite the collection now. The most noticeable were Bakugo's, looking like a handprint on his left shoulder, and another patch of burned, scarred skin. The handprint one was the most recent one Bakugo left him. He sneered, remembering what had happened. He knew Bakugo wasn't a nice person now. He knew that. But hearing him say that he should jump off a roof and hope to have a quirk in his next life, that had hurt. Because now, Izuku knew he wouldn't be able to forgive him. He had been suicidal most of his life, had effectively tried to end it. If he hadn't met Stain and would have heard Bakugo say that to him, he honestly was pretty sure he would have done it. And it had also been the day All Might had told him he couldn't be a hero. He ignored the thought. Now, there were also scars he got while training with Chizame. Mostly straight lines scattered everywhere, each time blades would touch him. Because Chizame being Chizame, he wasn't using blunt blades for their lessons, but real ones, sharp and ready to kill. So, yeah, he had ended up with a lot of scars from that, mostly in the first years of learning sword fighting, though now he was proud to say he had equally given back some of his hits on the man. The first time that happened, both of them had been so surprised, it had made Izuku laugh, and even more surprising, Chizame had laughed too. The memory brought a small smile on his face, and immediately his dark green force eyes cleared and became a bright emerald green. Right, shower, focus. He undressed himself, got into the tube, put the temperature the hottest he could endure, and let it run down his neck and back, eyelids fluttering shut. He stood there, under the spray for a good moment, enough to make him sleepy and relaxed. After a good scrubbing with soap and shampoo for curly hair, he got out, dried himself fast, put on his clean clothes, and instead of drying his hair, he tied them in a high bun because he was too lazy for more. Time to meet up with Chizame. He headed out, taking his phone, his keys, and medical black mask to cover his face. He also put on a Present Mic merch sweater, which was black, with a yellow speaker in the back. The words, "Yeah," bold and yellow as well, put as if went out of a speaker. As for the mask, it was part because he was easily recognized as the poor quirkless one in the neighborhood and didn't want to be seen, and part because if he ever was caught meeting a villain, there was less of a chance because he was hiding his face. For good measure, he even put his hood on. He walked fast, making sure to be light on his feet and not make any noise. Moving soundlessly was pretty practical, and the habit had been taught early into his training, becoming a reflex by now. He went into the less proper part of Musutafu, where homeless people and not exactly villain but almost people were hanging around. The day was ending, and he knew what he would come back. The day was ending, and he knew when he would come back it was going to be night. But he was prepared. Oh, he wasn't wearing any weapons on him, obviously. All the blades he was using were old ones from Chizame, and he would keep those. But he knew hand-to-hand combat, and he was faster and agile. Skills he got not from Chizame, but from running away from bullies. He walked through the dark alleys, head down but hyper-aware of any other presences. He knew the way by heart now. Turn left, then continue until the old kiosk, and then turn right, and there, in an abandoned small proprietary stuck between two old tall buildings, who had a very small garden. It was mostly dried grass and a half-dead tree, but still. He arrived at the barn, or at least that's what he'd been calling it since he discovered the place. It had nothing to do with a barn, honestly, but it was an old traditional Japanese home. The wood was dry and some of it was rotten, but the building was surprisingly still standing and pretty sturdy. He was calling it a barn because they had needed a code name for the place, and also because of the small garden, which had reminded him of the countryside. Yes, Chizame had mocked his choice of name, and yes, he was going to keep it regardless. Anyway, it was the location where he trained with Chizame, and had been for 5 years now. The inside wasn't huge, but it was enough for combat and all sorts of fighting. If they needed to run or do parkour, then they would just do it outside. He still remembered Chizame making him parkour the old town during a storm, laughing at him while he slipped, and telling him he looked like a wet dog. Izuku walked the little patch towards the entrance, slided open the wooden door, and slipped inside. Closing it behind him, he took a moment to get used to the darkness, because, yeah, there was no electricity, only actual torches, oil lamps, and candles lighting up the place. It wasn't huge nor fancy, but it did the job. The walls were mostly made of bamboo. The ceiling was rather low. There wasn't any furniture, only an old sofa and a small coffee table in the corner. Then his eyes met the person sitting on the sofa, their blades shimmering under the fires of the room. "How did it go?" Chizume's voice echoed through the silence, and Izuku smiled. "It went well, I think so. I was able to get villain points and rescue points. All we have to do now is wait." Izuku sat down on the floor. It was all covered with tatami. Chizume didn't say anything, so he continued. "I took a pole from a stop sign and used it as a sort of spear, and then I used it to behead the robots. Oh, because it was robots. I guessed it right. Well, it's been that for years now, but you never know. Also, there was this huge robot, and its value was 0 points, and I still took it down because I thought it was going to crush a girl. She was stuck, and Izuku kept rambling about the exam, talking about every type of quirks he noticed, how he thought that the practical was biased and that he had met Bakugo, but nothing really happened. All the while, Chizume was listening to his pupil, a small but present proud smile on his thin lips. When he heard that the kid had saved a girl without it even if it wouldn't get him any points, it was just another confirmation that he chose right. Izuku would be a true, great hero. It lasted for a while, then Izuku did his stretching routine. They sparred a little, but ended the night early, to Izuku's surprise. Chizume smiled at him and slowly lifted his arm and put his hand on Izuku's head. He patted the fluffy hair once, then retracted his arm. "You did good, kid." At that, Izuku's eyes widened and shone a little more, a huge grin appearing on his face. "Thanks, Chizume-san." They looked at each other for a moment more, then Chizume turned around. "Go rest. We'll meet the day after tomorrow, at the usual hour. You need a good night of sleep." Izuku nodded, even if Chizume wasn't looking at him, and with a polite bow and a quick goodbye, left the barn. As Izuku walked out, he was still feeling slightly dizzy by Chizume's gesture. A pat on the head? By the hero killer himself? He was smiling so big right now, he couldn't believe it. Years of knowing the man, working with him almost every day, and he had never made a gentle gesture, but he just did now. Izuku kept smiling until he went home, and as he went to bed, he thought that it might be the best day he ever had for a long time. And that was the rest of chapter 2, and holy shit, I cannot speak today. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. I want to say sorry for not posting for a while. Things have been really, really busy. I'm going to go ahead and record the next video now. That way it'll actually come out and not like a month or two later, because I don't know how long it took me to post this one. But yeah, so I hope you guys have a nice day or night, just have a nice life. That sounds like a goodbye, like a forever goodbye. That is not what this is. Goodbye.